Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm here with my cat Havala. And before I start with this video, I just want to give a huge thank you for everyone who commented and subscribed and liked my last video, my discussion video, which I thought about for a few days, and in my head I was like, nailed it! And then I took some notes, and then I got in front of the camera and it was like, not so much! But apparently I did better than I thought I did, and I'm just so grateful for having the new discussion and the new subscribers and new people to subscribe to, and I definitely succeeded in feeling more of that booktube vibe and more of the community, and thanks so much. And now, to get to the point of this whole community, into reading. This is my Friday Reads video for this week, and my theme, more or less, has been short story collections. I made that sort of semi-theme for the month because it's my birthday month. My birthday's on Saturday, and I've been reading from a few collections, and I thought I'd share a bit about that. So this first collection I completed at the beginning of the week. This is Scenes from a Village Life by Amos. I believe this is the fourth Oz book that I've read. It's a series of interconnected short stories about an Israeli village called Tel Ilan. I think it's supposed to be sort of big in scope and deal with how it's changed throughout its 100 years, but most of these stories are very centered on specific characters, and a big overarching theme is people feeling very lost and out of place, and I love dealing with that sort of emotion, and these stories, for the most part, really spoke to me. I think the last one was a bit of a dud, if for no other reason than the title, which describes the story, which is in a faraway place at another time, taking us away from the entire scope of the rest of the stories. It's kind of surreal, and it's based on a nightmare Oz had, apparently, he told NPR, or just vaguely about people who seem pretty primitive and uncivilized and scared and violent. And I don't know, it didn't work for me. And I thought I'd read from a little bit from my favorite story, Digging, which is about this retired, crotchety old Israeli Knesset member, Pesach Kedem, who lives with his middle-aged daughter, and his daughter rents out some space to an Arab student who is doing research on Jews and Arabs, always very contentious in the area, and this is one of those cantankerous old men that I think Oz replicated a bit in Judas. He had another one of those opinionated, cantankerous old men who you basically had to force someone to spend time with so they could spew out all day. And it's really rich characterization, some wonderful dialogue, and just really gets you into the character. And so I thought I'd read a bit of a diatribe that he's saying to his daughter Rachel, when he's actually remembering to call her Rachel and not by his wife Abigail's name, so that's a plus. Yitzhak Tabenkin, Pesach Kedem said, "Better you shouldn't ask me anything about Tabenkin." Rachel didn't. When he was an old man, Tabenkin decided to disguise himself as a Hasidic rabbi. He grew his beard down to his knees and started issuing rabbinic rulings. But I don't want to say a single word about him, for good or ill. He was a considerable fanatic, believe me, and he was a dogmatist too, a cruel, tyrannical man. He maltreated even his wife and his children all those years. But what is he to me? I have nothing to say about him. You can torture me if you like, but you won't get me to say a bad word about Tabenkin, or a good one either. Kindly note that down. Pesach Kedem chooses to maintain a total silence over the whole incident of the great split between him and Tabenkin in 1952. Did you write that down? Word for word? And kindly add this too. From an ethical viewpoint, Poale Zion stood at least 2 or 3 rungs below Hapoel Hatzair. No, you should please cross that out. Instead, you should write, Pesach Kedem no longer sees any reason to become involved in the controversy between Poale Zion and Hapoel Hatzair. Oh, my Hebrew. It's all over and done with. History has proven both of them wrong, and it has proved to anyone who is not a fanatic or a dogmatist how wrong they were and how right I was in that controversy. I say this with all due modesty and with total objectivity. I was right where they both erred. No, cross out erred and write transgressed. And then write iniquity to transgression when they hurled groundless accusations and all sorts of stuff and nonsense at me. History itself, objective reality, came down and proved in black and white how they had wronged me. And the worst offenders were Comrade Hopeless and Comrade Useless, Tabenkin's cat paws, full stop. Yet there was a time when we were young that I liked them both. I even liked Tabenkin sometimes before he became a rabbi, and they liked me up to a point too. We dreamed of improving ourselves, of improving the whole world. We loved the hills and the valleys and the wilderness up to a point. Where were we, Rachel? How did we get here? Where were we before? Now I'm wondering where or if I should go next in Oz's collection. I'm kind of cherry-picking a bit, but I did really enjoy this one. I'm in the middle of, I actually hope to finish soon, the New York stories of Elizabeth Hardwick, and I'm not enjoying these as much. Part of me is concerned that that has to do with me reading various short story collections at one time, and that maybe this collection's just getting under the rug of my psyche. I'm not sure where that metaphor is going. I can see how she's a stylist. I can see how she's writing commentary about the social lives of these New Yorkers, mostly in the 50s. But to me, I'm not finding the characters and situations all that engaging. I feel like her style's very journalistic and dictating what's happening a lot, and I'm not getting the great voice that I got with Oz as much and with other short stories that I'm reading. I do like a couple of the stories in the middle. A Season's Romance about this young woman who earns a scholarship studying art history to go to Europe, and then she starts this seasonal romance on the boat over to Europe, and it alters the rest of her life, this relationship with this man, even though it ultimately ends, but that she can't quite go back to the academia that she prepped her whole life to be involved in. So that part kind of makes me sad, especially for the 50s, about a woman being academic. But it's interesting how relationships can alter the course of our lives. And then there's The Oak and the Axe, which starts with the line, Clara Church, although only 33, earned $15,000 a year. And then I had to remember this was written in 1956. And it's about, again, a working woman in New York. She is an editor at a magazine, and first her marriage falls apart, and then she kind of gets involved with another man, and then her job kind of falls apart. And man, it's just really rough, especially reading about these women in the 50s. How their lives are falling apart when it seems like it takes so much for them to get there in the first place. But those are the stories that really grabbed me. And before I move on to this Flannery O'Connor collection, which I got from the Strand, used to remember that I got it from the Strand, I thought I'd talk briefly and move away from short story collections to what I'm listening to on audiobook and hope to finish soon. It's YA fantasy, Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. It's a high fantasy about a city that has been taken over by gods and has sort of been erased from the rest of the world, or, you know, cut off really from the rest of the world, while the gods are being merciless and cruel to the population, and part of it is about abducting them and forcing them to have half-spawned children, and ultimately the humans have enough and kill the gods. This is all backstory, and then we're like into the future, and we're dealing with the descendants. We have the humans who are trying to get their lives back, although it's hard to do because the citadel where the gods tortured them is still in place. And then unbeknownst to them, there were some survivors of their attack on the god spawn, because they killed children too when they killed the gods. And so we're dealing with these multiple characters and figuring out if these god spawn are safe to rejoin society, or if they even can rejoin society, and what to do about this citadel and all the bad memories. And I love it for the fact that we're dealing now not with, you know, malicious gods who are all evil, but from people who are traumatized from different corners, and we get to explore complex issues of morality and revenge from different types of characters. And Taylor's also really great with the world building, like Strange the Dreamer. The title has a lot of layers to it, and that even comes from another place, another city that's away from the city of Weep, which is named the City of Weep because the real name has been forgotten. And she's building up a lot of intriguing mythology and questions about the plot, of course. And some of her metaphors are a little tedious, and some of the romance is a bit too schmaltzy, but overall I'm really enjoying listening to this. But now to the book in my hand, the Flannery O'Connor book. It's a large collection of her short stories, 31 in all. There are 31 days in the month, so I am roughly reading one story a day. I got a little bit of a late start, but now I'm mostly on track again. I'm really enjoying these. Flannery O'Connor has a voice that draws you in immediately. Her characters are just so rich and alive, and you can just see them standing there in front of you. In the last story I read, A Late Encounter with the Enemy, there's even a crotchety old man who was once a war hero. Although unlike Pesach Kedem, I think he mostly just wants to be quiet and shut up and can barely remember the past, and he just wants to remember some made-up fantasy about being with the girls in the premiere and kind of being a playboy. But his relatives have kind of had enough of him too. So that's about it for me now. This is my second time filming this video. It's gone a lot better than the first because little miss over there is all nice and quiet now and sleeping again. And so I hope that your reading has gone well throughout the week and that you have some interesting stuff going into the weekend. And happy birthday to all of my fellow July babies. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.